Hello everyone, today we're taking a look at the happy model Crux35. Yeah, it's another 3.5-inch propeller. It's kind of the new hotness, and after reviewing a lot of different quads over the years, sometimes it's a little bit hard to be caught off guard or be surprised by something. You tend to kind of know what you're getting into. And if you follow the channel, you know that I've reviewed the GEP-RC Smart 35 HD. It's got a Vista and a Nano camera in it. And we've done the Baby Hawk 2 HD, which has got a Nebula Pro, one of the last times we could get the Nebula Pro, at least for a while. And we've also done the Avio 3.5. So 3.5 shouldn't be all that new, but what I can tell you off the bat about the happy model Crux35, it does not fly like a 3.5-inch quad. It doesn't fly like a lot of 3-inch quads. It has much more of what I think of as a micro feel to it. And you might like that. The Crux35 comes with these EX1404 3500 kV motors. The propeller is an HQ T-style prop, and it is a 3.5 by 2. Of course, it is tri-bladed. The all-in-one flight controller with the ELRS version is an F411. The Express LRS edition comes with a 12-amp 4-in-1 ESC. The FrSky version comes with a 20-amp 4-in-1 ESC. Both are running BLLES, but they have been flashed, so you can run RPM filtering. The FPV camera is the Caddx Ant, and sending us what the camera sees is the VTX, which is the OVX303. This is the OpenVTX, and Jai Smith from the Express LRS team, yeah, he kind of started this. The OVX303 detects which version of smart audio you selected. You don't have to know. I did get an extra set of props. The props press on real tight, but make sure you use those prop screws. We've got a 3D printed mount right here that is designed for the SMO4K, and I flew it with the GoPro Hero 6, naked of course. Got my favorite motor wire tape, taping those motor wires down. The battery strap is huge, way excessive I think. Looks like we got a 15 volt, 100 microfarad capacitor here on the battery lead. Rear TPU mount holds our antenna for Express LRS as well as that OVX303 antenna. It weighs just under 91 grams. I flew it on this new G&B 720 milliamp 4S battery, and that brings the weight up to 160 flat grams. If we add my naked GoPro Hero 6 with the screw and my little lead to power it, it brings the weight up to 191.25 grams. The bottom plate looks to be over 3 millimeters thick, and the bottom is a plate. The arms are not replaceable. Top plate is 2 millimeters thick, and the camera protection plate is also 2 millimeters thick. Motor post to motor post, I'm getting 150 millimeters. Going back in time here for just a minute. Yeah, I got a haircut. It's a different day. But I thought I need to make it especially clear in the flight video. When I narrate that, I'm specifically talking a lot about Express LRS receiver and FrSky receiver, and I talk about SPI. Well, technically they're both SPI because they're on the board. But I think if you like this quad, the only version you should look at getting is the Express LRS version. So I hope that you have got your Express LRS module, whether it's a happy model for your jumper or for your X-Lite or your Namimmo for a much larger box style torpedo radio, because I think that's the only one that you should be getting. Otherwise, I think you should look to add your own receiver, because we know FrSky SPI receivers don't have very good range, and this quad carries quite a bit of speed. It's obvious at this point this is the lightest of the 3.5 inch, so we can expect probably two things: longer flight times, and possibly a durability issue. Well, durability is going to take some time to tell. We're going to have to get this in more people's hands and see what their experiences are, because in my particular case, I didn't suffer any damage. You've already seen the quad. You know I didn't suffer any damage. My crashes were all pretty minor. I didn't do true crash testing, as you may have seen on the channel a few times. But this flight is going to come in at over 6 minutes on that 720 milliamp battery. Now, I don't have a lot of experience flying that 720, so I'm not endorsing that. I need to get it on some different quads and kind of test it out to see how it responds to quads that are heavier and possibly require more power in order to power them. I'm thinking of a traditional 3-inch that has, say, a 1407 or 1408 motor, or even a 15 or 16 something motor. I need to get those heavy-duty powertrains on the battery before I have a good feeling about whether that battery can stand up to it. But in this particular case, I think it's pretty well matched for this quad. Like I said, 6 minutes flying like this in my backyard. I am not carrying the naked GoPro at this point though. So our weather data for today, actually cooler. This day was about 87 degrees, and we have winds that are, well, at the beginning of this flight, I think the winds were less. I actually remember this flight because it was just 2 days ago. When I first started this particular flight, I would say was probably around 7 miles an hour, but by the time I get down to the end, it's probably closer to 12 with some gusts above 15. So I see some flutter when I do those zero throttle maneuvers over the house and I've got the nose down. I see that either the wind is impacting it or we need a little bit more I-turn possibly on the PID tune. But, you know, I'm afraid to adjust that PID tune because I really enjoyed how it felt in air. Like I said in the intro, this does not fly or feel like the other 3.5 inchers. And I've kind of liked the 3.5 inch class. I think it's a kind of versatile class in that you can do cruisy exploratory flight and good long flight times, or if you have the right sort of space and skill set, you can go out and just, you know, rip the skies up. But this one flew a lot like a much lighter, a much smaller quad. Now there are props in view. Hopefully that was apparent to you the whole time. You have to decide whether props in view is something that you just can't handle or it doesn't bother you at all. If you just want a good flying quad, you don't care about the props in view, you know, that's a choice that you have to make. I myself don't mind props in view, but I think this is a little much for props in view, especially with the camera angle that I'm flying on this quad. So usually you just see the props in view a little bit lower. It's not so predominant. Usually for my particular case, it doesn't come above that bottom lower level of the OSD. It usually comes right at that level. But, you know, here obviously you can see the props are much more predominant. And in this flight, we're going to do all sorts of the typical, you know, high-speed turns that I do and the punches over the house. We go both ways, chimney side to the garage side to the chimney side. We do a couple straight up from that bush kind of down there over in the corner of the house. And it was such a fun experience to fly. I was just really happy. Now, I will warn you, and I said it in the intro, hopefully you didn't miss it, there are two versions of this, the Express LRS as well as FR Sky, but that is SPI. And I would not get that if you're looking at doing the SPI. This quad is fast, it's larger, so you're going to need to be able to run it out further, I would think, in many cases. Maybe you fly in your backyard, and your backyard's the same space as mine, which I thought it was a lot of fun. But if you get beyond my yard by too much, you're going to have issues probably with that SPI receiver. And I've been a huge advocate of Express LRS, and hopefully you've either got Express LRS equipment en route to you or you've already got some that you can bind up to this. Finding an SPI Express LRS receiver is pretty easy. You just go into the Betaflight page, you go to the receiver tab, there is a bind button on the receiver tab that activates the bind command. You can also do it from the CLI by typing bind_RX, and then you bind on your radio. Easy peasy. You don't have to flash the SPI receiver because it's Express LRS that's on the board. You just bind it up and it'll work. It did for me. I'm flying it right here. But really interesting that they went so light. We've got, if you're into staying under that 250 gram weird number that we've kind of been thrown out in this hobby, you've got a lot of overhead. Can it fly with one of the heavier GoPros? Sure. But it's going to change how it flies. I'm flying it right here as you see it without any GoPro. So if you add, say, 30, 40, 50, 70 grams, it's going to change the flight characteristics, because that's probably, what is that, about half? If you get, I think the new GoPro Hero 10 leaked, and I think it was coming in over 60 grams. So that's almost half of your all-up weight, or, you know, a third of your all-up weight. So it's going to affect the flight time and the flight performance. For me, I wouldn't put a naked GoPro on it unless I was out doing that exploratory cruisy flight, and we will look at my cruisy flight. It's actually, the flight I've chosen for that came as a storm was rolling in, and it was pretty interesting because you can actually see the ring of the storm cloud moving in on us. We won't watch that whole thing. That flight comes in at over 7.5 minutes. I think it was closer to 8 minutes. But we'll look at that, and I thought, again, that cloud coming in with that storm. I felt the wind right as my flight, my exploratory flight that we'll see next. I felt the wind picking up, and that is a telltale sign that that storm is imminent. It's going to start dropping raindrops on our head just any second, so I had to hightail it out of there. Okay, our flight is just about over. I'm going to hover it in and bring it in around the table so it's easy to reach for me. You can see our flight time is 6 minutes and 12 seconds. And we go back to the home screen and we're going to see our battery voltage pop back up to over 3.52 volts per cell. Okay, here's my exploratory flight, and you can see that storm right out in front of us. I don't have any flight audio for this one. I was in such a hurry to get this flight in before those clouds got to me that I didn't get my camera out. So I apologize. You can hear me much more clearer probably than you can over the bug noise you might be used to hearing or the mower noise that you might be used to hearing on the channel. But I'm just going to be cruising this out and around and getting some GoPro footage. And I thought that the cloud storm, as you can see it's kind of in the distance here, but we'll scoot forward in the flight, and later on you'll be able to see that ring that I don't know my weather terms, I don't know my cloud terms either, but that ring moves substantially closer to us just during the short period of this flight. Of course, if you've got the Express LRS version, you're going to have more range than you've got video. I think we can all kind of conclude that our VTXs now have to catch up. We have control link that can allow us to really stretch our quad legs and go places that we maybe didn't go before. I know Crossfire and Tracer and Ghost and those protocols have really good range as well. But at this point, you know, Express LRS for me is the way to go because of the cost, the performance, the packet rate, all sorts of options to buy different sort of Express LRS equipment. Express LRS is pretty young and it's already performing very, very well. Can you imagine what Express LRS is going to do in, say, 6 months? Which it's pretty exciting to me. But if you come to the channel, you know that I'm pretty excited about Express LRS. I think it's going to really help, especially those of us that like micros and we've struggled with SPI receivers. Express LRS is going to fix that, and we can just wave goodbye to FrSky. And we can buy an FrSky radio. FrSky makes nice radios. For the longest time, I flew an X-Lite, and I've been contemplating giving the X-Lite another go. Because if I've got Express LRS, I don't necessarily need to fly any particular radio, just find the one that I like the most and fly it. But of course, there's a cost comparison. So if you're buying, I would still recommend, if you're buying a radio today, that you get a multi-protocol based radio, whether that's a Jumper or Radio Master, that's up to you. But those are the two main factors. You can add Express LRS modules to either one of the radios, regardless of the model of either one of those brands. Let's move forward and look at a little bit more of our cloud and our storm that's brewing in. As we circle around, you can see that ring. It's pretty cool. And you can see how much closer that storm is now just in this short period of the time. I think I stated the time that was wrong for this flight. I went back and looked, and the flight comes in at over 8 minutes, and I'm flying it on a 650 milliamp battery. So it's pretty dang efficient. It's light, it's sporty. The only question I have is I probably need to give it more crashes. I need to see if we're going to break an arm. And I noticed that in their arm design, they went to kind of a triangle sort of design. Now, I'd heard, if you're not aware, Chris Rosser, he is an engineer, has started the YouTube channel, and one of the things that he had talked a lot about, or I've caught snippets of his, but he really talks about frame resonance and having these kind of triangle arms and really helping for that. One of the things I didn't cover during my flight, I kind of forgot, I just now referenced my notes again, is even though this is BLHeliS, they flashed this with ESC firmware that allows you to run RPM filtering. So that's part of the setup, the beta flight configuration. Also, I probably mentioned it in the quick roll, but we have this OpenVTX, and the cool thing about that is, there may be other cool things. I'm not really up to date on OpenVTX, but you don't have to go in and set the protocol for a particular version, whether that's Tramp or not Tramp or Smart Audio. This works with any of them. So you can just, this is from my reading, not from my experience. This is the only one I've experienced. You can select the Smart Audio version or protocol for any of them and it will work, whether it's Tramp or Smart Audio. And that's pretty cool. I think there'll be other developments. I can't imagine something being open and there not being more developments for the hardware. It's kind of one of the mantras of being open, is future development is impending. You will have to look at the VTX performance in my flight, and I'll play the longer flight that I was out cruising around so you can see some of the analog data from the camera. There is an HD version of this one that, you know, it's listed with the Caddx Vista and the Nebula Nano. You know, it's going to have to be a nano camera because the plate, the width just isn't wide enough to get the Nebula Pro camera, which is the 19mm camera. So this has got the 14mm camera in it now. And if you got the Vista or DJI version, it would have the Nebula camera in it. Nebula Nano, excuse me. So you might get that if you want, you know, if you have a DJI radio and goggles, you don't have any other radio or goggles, then that might be the one you want to get. And, you know, it's going to change the weight too, even if you don't fly it with an HD camera mounted on top. You know, the Vista is going to add, what is it, like 12 grams, maybe as much as 15 grams. So you wouldn't have the OpenVTX and you wouldn't have the Caddx Ant. So you would just have the Vista and the Nebula Nano camera. So your weight, while some of these components would be removed to offset that, your weight does go up. Of course, that is also going to change the flight time and flight characteristics, but less than if you were to, you know, fly it with a stock, you know, new GoPro Hero 10 that might be coming out any day now. I've noticed on the frame, if you're looking at the frame because you're interested in it, that we do have other mount points. I mentioned it in the quick roll how excessive this battery strap is. Let me show you that while we're looking here down at the bottom. I shouldn't have pulled that all the way to the buckle. Now that I've got the battery back in and I pull my strap over, and I'm going to get it somewhat taut here, and you can see that this is the part of the Velcro that actually sticks down. There's not much of it that gets started, or you've really got to do something with this tail. So what I tend to do, I just tend to tuck it and get this front part of the strap against it. And that's actually how I flew it. So this is all extra. Of course, you can fly it with a bigger battery. I think I saw on their website that the biggest recommended battery is an 1100 milliamp 4S. So you may, if you choose to use that battery, need more of this strap. For me and my flights and the battery uses that I had, this was just, it was a bit excessive. But, you know, battery straps are so cheap. We get those with every order, it seems like. I've got, I don't know, I think I've thrown away a lot of battery straps over the years, because you just get one, like I said, with every order. I mentioned Chris Rosser and this triangle design arm. I think his are a little bit different, of course. Do note, let me take the battery back out, that arm does not come back and connect to the body. It's just kind of braced with one another. So my presumption there is that if you hit an arm, that some of that force would be transferred to the rear arm. Hopefully it doesn't snap in here. Speaking of the frame, let's test the stiffness here. Okay, so I can get some flex. I'm giving it quite a bit of force there, but I am getting some flex. Of course, I've seen a number of frames with a lot more flex. Let's grab these other frames just while I'm here, if this is an important data point for you guys. Yeah, the Gep-RC is thicker and stiffer. Let's go over to the Baby Hawk 2 HD. I think this one is going to be stiff too. Well, I would say this is actually about as flexible as the Crux35, or maybe the Crux35 might even be a touch stiffer than the Baby Hawk. And last but not least, the Avant Quads VO 3.5, and this one has replaceable arms. So if you're looking at this category and you want replaceable arms, this is the only one I'm aware of that does replaceable arms. You might be able to find just frames that are in the 3.5-inch prop category that have replaceable arms, but as far as a bind and fly or a ready to fly, this is the only one I'm aware of. You know, I think this one is stiffer than the Baby Hawk. The VO 3.5 is stiffer than the Baby Hawk, but it's too close to be able to tell the difference between the Crux35 and the VO 3.5. So that's kind of where I see the stiffness at, to try to give you some information about that. I was a little bit concerned about this T antenna and how these wires can come down. You see how close it is? You know, again, I didn't have any problems, but there is potential, as you can see here, that if the wires somehow were to get down here and stay down here and the props were spinning, it could end up getting chopped. I think an easy fix, it's kind of a ugly fix, is to just take a part of a zip tie and just tape it on both ends. And that will stiffen these up a little bit and kind of ensure that they don't get down in the prop line. I do get some questions about my Naked Hero and how I power it. Because I have to transfer this from quad to quad all the time, I didn't like having this pigtail and having to find a voltage area to solder it to, so I just made this. I'm running the Beta FPV case and back. This is fairly old, so, you know, mine's been working for me. I've read a lot of different reports about Beta FPV back for the Naked GoPro not working well for others, but of course, you know, you hear that about every product in some regards because unpopular news always spreads a lot faster. But so I just made a pigtail to put between my flight battery and my quad connector, and that's how I power my Naked GoPro. It's just a simple XT30 soldered on both ends, and then I took some black hot glue and just kind of smothered it to make sure that my lead, after I of course got my battery lead for my Naked GoPro soldered on here, I just kind of smothered that, so it makes it easy, it makes it transferable, real easy for me. But that's what I do, and in this particular case I routed it between the gap in the arms, and then I brought it up through this hole right here. That kept the wire out of the prop line. As far as price right now, what I see is that the analog version, which I have in front of us here, comes in at $142 on Banggood's website. Don't forget, I have a coupon code that you can use for anything on Banggood. It's BG Nick Burns. You get 8% off. It is limited to 10 uses per person. And there's another limit on there. I'll put the full details down in the video description. It's escaping me in the moment. If you choose to go with the HD version, I honestly don't know when that might ship. I don't know if they're shipping the Nano cameras and Vistas out right now. I just don't have information on that. So you might be able to get this right away, get this shipping if you do want the Vista version with the Nano camera. That price comes in at $269. So we have a $127 difference between the two, analog versus HD. So tell me what you think. Did it look like I was flying a 3.5-inch quad, or did it just look like another micro flying in my backyard? Did it look like a more traditional 3-incher maybe? Something a little bit more powerful and light? I'm really interested to know what you thought of the aggressive flight in the back. Sure, most quads can go out and cruise. Yeah, not a problem. This comes with a mount already on it. So if you buy one and you're worried about the mount, we have seen some of these quads come out and they didn't have mounts on them. This one does have that if you want to go out and do the exploratory, get HD sort of footage on the quad. And what do you think of this arm design? I'm specifically wondering about this. This is something we haven't seen before, especially with this section on the back where it doesn't join in. You know, we've got these connectors down here for our motors. It's different, it's new, and it also makes me want to ask you what you think about it. I enjoyed it, but your purchase decision is based upon what you think. If you have any comments, questions, suggestions, or otherwise, please let me know in the section down below. I appreciate your time. And thanks for watching. Or for your